wine or champagne, many of us welcomed in the new year by raising a glass to 2021. But non-alcoholic drinks are also having a real moment, with more brands creating alternatives for non-drinkers.
So are we seeing a shift in Australia's drinking culture, and what impact is that having on public health? We're joined now by Professor Rosemary Calder from Victoria University's Mitchell Institute, and also Faye Lawrence, who is the founder of alcohol-free social group Untoxicated. Good morning to both of you. Faye, I might start with you.
Morning.
Why did you decide to stop drinking?
Well, I was a problem drinker. So I have been a heavy drinker for decades, really. But I think, like a lot of people, I was high functioning. So, you know, I still held down the job, the kids, the mortgage, all the rest of it. But alcohol, you know, really wasn't serving me. And it did get to a point where I had lost control of my drinking. So that's why I did stop in the end, yeah.
And when you decided to stop, how did that change things? How did it change your social life? And how did people respond to you?
I think people responded to me actually quite well. Though I think they were probably quite incredulous, actually, because I'd always been known as such a, you know, party animal and the life and soul of the party, and always the last one to leave. So I think, you know, people were generally quite supportive. But for me, one of the things that kind of kept me stuck in drinking for a long time was, how am I going to manage my social life without alcohol? Because it was such an integral part, and it was almost like part of my identity, really. So that it was it was sort of like learning to be in the world again, because I'd never had, my whole adult life had always been, you know, couched in booze.
Professor Rosemary Calder, we are seeing more and more people go down that path. What impact, or what potential impact, will that have on public health?
Well, alcohol is related to a whole lot of preventable chronic disease, so reduction in the consumption of alcohol is only going to be good for the population's health. It's a slight caution on the non-alcoholic drinks, because we also have to be very conscious of sugar. Over 67% of Australians are overweight or obese, and that's an extraordinary figure, and it's contributed to by our diet and by what we drink. And alcohol is one of those, and sugar-sweetened beverages are the other. So we've just got to be aware that our health relies on moderation in all things.
And we are seeing more people give up alcohol, or at least start to limit their alcohol consumption. Are we seeing it differently play out differently in different age groups, Professor?
That's not clear at the moment, but what is clear is that your socioeconomic status is a strong influence on what you drink and how much you drink. And we do know that alcohol consumption is highly correlated with lower socioeconomic status in part, but also in high socioeconomic status. So some of us are over drinking because we can afford to drink excessively, and others are drinking excessively because it's available, it's low cost. So there's high cost wines and spirits that are consumed in higher income households and excessively, and lower cost beers and the like are consumed in lower cost households.
Faye, from the people that you speak to from your group Untoxicated, why are people drinking less? What are the reasons?
I think there's quite a few reasons. I think people are starting to understand the health implications like they did with smoking. At Untoxicated, we've never taken an anti-alcohol approach. We use a carrot rather than a stick approach. But I think people are understanding the links with mental health, you know, that sort of exacerbation of any mental health stuff that might be going on, the cancer link. Obviously, weight is a thing for people. You know, hangovers. No. And there's that intergenerational piece as well, where, you know, if someone's grown up possibly in a household where their parents or parent was a heavy drinker, they kind of, when they have their own kids, reassess sometimes that, you know, they're recreating that same thing for their own children. So there's multiple reasons. Obviously, there's religious reasons and other cultural reasons as well. So there's a lot of reasons that people are making this shift. And I think what the non-alcohol products can do is allow people to make that choice and not feel kind of shunned from their groups. So it is welcome that you know, we're kind of shifting the narrative here around what it means to be sober or sober curious, you know, to drink nothing or to drink less than you're doing at the moment.
And on that shifting the narrative, Professor Calder, what about days like, or months like Dry July or Sober October, all the public health messaging that we've seen over many years? Is that contributing to a shift in the narrative?
Absolutely, and I totally agree with Faye. I think people are aware of the health impacts, increasingly aware of the health impacts. And any public health messaging that is positive about reducing alcohol is going to make a big difference to people's attitudes. We know from public health work over many decades that it's a message that gets through, and the message has to be constant. We learnt that in COVID. We've learnt it again in COVID, and we need not to forget it this time. So, yes, all those months, weeks, days, messages that come out from groups such as Faye's running, they all make a huge difference.
It's hard not to look at these sorts of things without looking through the lens of the pandemic, because it's impacted our lives in so many different ways. Faye, for you and for the people that you know who have given up alcohol or who are limiting alcohol, how has the pandemic played into that, both good and bad?
I think anecdotally, what we saw at the beginning of the pandemic was a lot of people who were sort of falling off the wagon, if you like, or really hitting it a lot harder because of the, you know, obviously heightened anxiety and sort of threat to survival almost, or unknown what that was going to be. And then over time, actually, a lot of people have used that time to actually assess their relationship with alcohol. And I think for a lot of people that actually the social isolation in some respects has been advantageous, because, you know, some people do drink in secret and drink alone. And then there's a whole swathe of people that kind of are feel that social pressure. And so for them to have that space and reflect has made them realise that, oh, maybe my relationship with alcohol isn't really serving me. So you see a bit of both, I think. But, yeah, I have definitely noticed that people are, the pause has given people an opportunity to reflect on their lifestyle choices.
Well, it's interesting to see this trend happening. Faye Lawrence and Professor Rosemary Calder, we really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Local manufacturers